Hello and welcome to Bust and Beyond with your host, Robin Hayhurst. In this podcast, Robin will share his personal journey and experiences from his businesses and help you to learn from failure. You'll learn tips, tricks, and how to see things from a new perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robin Hayhurst.
Hello everybody and welcome to Bust and Beyond podcast. My name's Robin Hayhurst. I'm very lucky to be joined today by Andy Biggs. Andy is a management consultant and an ex-CEO, and he's here to talk about his experiences and what he's learned from them. So Andy, let's get straight into it and tell us, from the start, how did you get into business?
Well, thank you very much, Robin, for inviting me. My background, I grew up in the south of England, and like many people, you don't know as a youngster what you really want to do. So I ended up at university and doing a course in economics, a general thing that I thought I was good at school. And me and my college roommate doing economics, we noticed that everybody from our course went on to train as a chartered accountant. So we were going to break the mold and we were going to forge our own pathway in our own way. He's a chartered accountant now as well. And as you gather, so am I. So I ended up in business partly by chance, but realized that I didn't want to be an auditor all my life. So I moved out of training with one of the big accountancy firms and got a job in a company that actually made things. And I was really determined not to be a kind of dull chartered accountant. And so we thought about very carefully what we should do, and we talked it through. And in the end, both of us became chartered accountants. And having trained as a chartered accountant, it was very good grounding. But what it did, it taught me about the fact that there's a big business thing, that this was a good skill set to work with. But I definitely did not still want to be an auditor, doing people's books and that kind of thing. But the general experience of being in business and having a degree of oversight and expertise said, I want to be in business, but I'll probably be an accountant with a business rather than being a dull bean counter. So I think I always, from the very early off, had the instincts to say I want to be doing business type things, but with a very strong professional skill as part of my skill set. And a couple of decades passed, and I've moved from being one of the sort of junior accountants in big companies, and you get promoted, you get more and more senior roles, and as you do that, you begin to get a much broader skill set in not just the pure technical discipline that you went into a business with. So you get exposed to many disciplines of operations and sales, and you get to pick the things you're good at, and sometimes don't necessarily have to concentrate on the things you're weak at because you're good at stuff. People promote you to do that stuff more. As a business person getting more senior, eventually you reach a level of, I suppose, seniority where you have to embrace, at least to understand, some of the stuff that you ignored early in your career, like marketing and broader strategy, which you didn't need to consider when you were just a minion doing what everybody said. So you get the bug for, actually, I'd really like to be able to have my hands around the whole business and see the whole thing. And that's, like my entire professional journey in corporate world.
I totally see that. I mean, I remember, and I'm not anti-accountants at all, just so you know.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, I'll forgive you for that.
But I remember doing a tour of the universities with I think it was the HBF, House Building Federation, and they wanted senior people in construction and development companies to go around and talk to people at the university, see if they would kind of consider another career, because we're trying to coax people into the industry.
Uh-huh. So
there was quite a few MDs from different companies. I was obviously the MD of my company. I was the only builder there. All the other MDs were accountants that were running the company, which shows you the kind of skill set required really to run a company, and how valuable that skill set is really.
My experience of good business leaders who've not been accountants is they still have a really good grip on the numbers. They still can shoot from the hip. They can do mental maths. They don't ignore the numbers. Accountants by, I suppose, profession are often perhaps too deep in the numbers, but good business leaders know the numbers. They know that they can outthink the people who've got too much detail, and they've got a good gut feel for how everything should hang together. And they can sniff when something's a bit off or when there's an opportunity to fill a gap.
I totally see that. So I think you've run a few businesses. Kind of run us through the business we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so the business we're going to talk about today was a collaboration between myself and another couple of management consultants. I need to kind of just rewind just a little bit to say that a decade ago, my corporate career came to not an abrupt end, but a definitive end with exiting a rather large business that had been taken over by a North American listed company. They didn't need a finance director. I didn't particularly want to hang around. So I exited into a world of not having a job and set myself up as a management consultant because I had a degree of expertise and I wanted a more flexible portfolio lifestyle. And I knew a few other people around, so I started making links. And through a friend I'd had for many, many years who'd been a consultant for a while, I started to do a little bit of work with him and his clients. And we get on really well. We're still very, very good friends. And he knew somebody else who he valued as another consultant. And we just got sort of meeting and meshing and decided that actually we had a range of complementary skills. As consultants, that we had backgrounds in different industries. My friend is a supply chain kind of lean Six Sigma expert. The friend he introduced me to was technically another accountant, warning sign coming up there already, but had been a managing director of a couple of companies and had a more broader commercial background to their CV. And we had an idea to pool our resources to eventually leverage each other's strengths in a business to offer strategic consulting to small and medium-sized enterprises based upon a strategic framework that my good friend had put together and had some success with in workshopping with some of his clients. So I could bring the sort of financial, the technical angle in. He could cover the supply chain operation stuff, and our other third director could cover the broader strategic and the selling marketing angles of things. So it seemed that we had a complementary skill set. So we set about putting a business together, formed a limited company, put money in. And part of the process was to develop a piece of software that would support the strategic consulting to allow, when we went in and consulted, you've got all this flashy software that can capture your numbers, produce these really neat visuals of your strategy and visualize a map in a way that was very unique. And, it seemed like a really good idea, really good product. We all liked it. If we'd been in business, we'd have liked, well, can I have one of those, please? And in fact, the third director had actually bought it from my friend when she was a managing director in a business and used it in a business. So it had at least one proof of concept. So let's put money in. Let's develop this proto proof of concept software that we can then grow and multiply out. Because once we've got the software, rather than relying upon desktop spreadsheets and stuff, we can multiply it out. People can dial in and we can do remote consultancy and we can do all kinds of sexy online stuff because that's the modern world. So it seemed back in 2018 when we started this to be a really future-proof idea, to be something that would enable us to find new clients. And so we seemed set for success, even though we hadn't invoiced a bean at that moment. We just put money in and started to develop a product, which was a development of something that had been used.
So Andy, can I ask, because this has come up in the few podcasts I've done. So were you equal partners in the business?
Not 100% in that. That's an interesting point here. There were three of us. And as far as decision-making was concerned, as regards directorships, there was the three of us. So, two of us could agree and the other one had to put up with the decisions. We decided from an ownership model that we would favor the director who had developed the intellectual framework that we were going to do, partly from a basis to say, well, that's probably where the IP has been sewn into the greatest on the outset. And if we were ultimate exit plans, you always think about an exit plan. If we were to sell this company, we think it's fair that he gets a disproportionate share of that because it's been built upon his intellectual property and the development of the model he developed. So we agreed that, and this was kind of suggested by the two minority directors, that the majority director or the majority shareholder had that incentive.
So not in a company sense, but in a business sense, it was a partnership between the three of you.
In a partnership. Okay. So we legally registered as a company.
Yeah.
3 directors with disproportionate share ownerships.
Okay, it's just interesting because it comes up as a tripping point for so many people, partnerships, and it's a recurring theme.
It is. And a very wise corporate lawyer a long time ago taught me this little truism that says that a contract, if you talk about a partnership contract or a contract for services, is never there for the marriage. It's always there for the divorce. As in, it always most primarily is used to define the terms under which you disengage rather than terms under which you engage. So you're always thinking about, when you set up the partnership, how do we exit? How do we exit well? What are the conditions that says that somebody who enters into this can exit gracefully? Or what are the clear terms under which we would consider this not existing in its current form?
So we have the company, you formed it, it's between the three of you. What happened next?
Yeah, so I painted the picture of all the happy sunshine that was happening back in 2018. And we all know the world's changed since then. But we spent best part of a year pulling together some specification for what we thought the product needed to look like, employing a software development company to put some back-end development in. So we had a web-based, server-based infrastructure for this front-end product. And we knew we were going to spend some money, but we planned once we had the thing on the streets, we would start to properly sell it and market it. And of course, 2019 was a funny old year. We didn't know what was coming. And we were just beginning to get ourselves to the stage of launching this, testing a few concepts with people, not getting a huge amount of bite, although we did have some interest from a university business school to use this as part of their program in teaching people how to do portfolio management of companies. And it fitted well in that strategic framework. And so we started, I think we did a university business school workshop in the first week in March 2020, just as there was this thing going around. I don't know if you remember that coronavirus thing that was happening.
Well, COVID, no.
So our timing in one sense couldn't have been more right and more wrong, as in like the product should have worked virtually, but we weren't at a sufficiently advanced stage to actually properly test it when the world was open for business, not virtually. And by the time we hit lockdown, we weren't at the advanced stage to start leveraging in a hybrid model. The whole revenue model was kind of dependent upon us having this software which hooked people in as exciting around this very visional concept. And then we'd run a workshop with a company where their data would be captured using the software. They'd have availability of all the visuals, but the workshop was the thing that generated us the money. The physical go and sit with a company, facilitate their people to come together, have all kinds of productive, constructive arguments about where they were going, how their business segments, which bits they need to kill, which bits they need to grow. And we just lost all our opportunity to actually get this into the marketplace because nobody was having physical strategy meetings anymore. It was all, let's get through this crisis. Or if we're going to have a strategy meeting, let's do it online. And we weren't in the position to leverage the consultancy to facilitate it online. So from a start point, we were delayed. Yeah, disappointing. We haven't had a chance to properly test this as a concept. And I'll talk about the learning in a little while. But we then get sort of deeper and deeper into lockdown and the implications. And all three of us consultants, we had our own businesses running on the side of this, trying to reinvent what we do. My business was probably less active than the other two, but I managed to get myself in a position where I was doing stuff very directly online with coaching clients and providing technical assistance remotely. And I started to grow during lockdown as I began to do online courses. One of the directors, the one who'd come to it third, who was the ex-managing director, had invested very heavily in a property to run a co-working space and provide physical leadership consulting to people from that physical property. And when lockdown hit, zero revenue stream with a big overhead for a property. So now I'm sitting there with overheads from home. The heating's on, the electricity's on, that's it. They had a very, very heavy overhead, a lot of stress, a lot of strain. And basically the whole stress of lockdown took them out mentally, emotionally, had a personal relationship breakdown and withdrew from engagement with us as the two other directors of this business, which was a bit of a blow for us because we got on very well, but we understood that they needed to focus on the other stuff. But that left us with the person who was best at sales and marketing, with a lot of the contacts and a lot of the marketplace available to us, not active. So we had all the technical skill, from a finance analysis point of view. We had the operations skill there, but the pipeline for sales, not there. The networking and leveraging, not there. So we had a product which we hadn't really proved in a marketplace that was very weird with lockdown. And the skills that we had from a sales and marketing point of view, not there. So we had a product that we were trying to sell without necessarily the right product for the right time in the right market, and without the repackaging skills to sell it effectively. Now, we could afford a bit of patience, but ultimately what happened was that as we emerged from lockdown, it looked to us like there was a fundamental technical problem with the product we'd written. Basically, there was a technology platform which had become redundant that we were using, that we had to put more money in to rewrite to make it work again. And at the same time, the learning I had was we had a really sexy idea for a product that solved a problem that clients weren't asking for.
So you were giving them what they needed, not what they wanted.
Yeah, that if they could articulate what they needed in terms of what we were offering, then we had a winner. But we weren't necessarily solving a problem that they were articulating or had felt. So we're pretty sure that companies have a need for the product, but they don't know that they have a need for the product.
So they don't want it.
They don't want it. And we as consultants, if you like, out of the choices we make, this is always going to be like one little tool in the toolbox that when we go together, we've got this product, we can offer it individually to our clients. But increasingly, what our clients are articulating in a post-COVID world, the needs they have, the pain they're feeling, at this point does not articulate a need for the product that we'd spent money developing. So we had one director down, a product that had cost us sunk cost, but required more money to put in. And we were getting busy enough from the answering the questions that clients did have and solving the problems they were articulating they had with our other business streams. And ultimately, this business that we formed wasn't going to have a revenue stream. And one director down, and we had spent money, including we'd taken some loans out during lockdown. We'd taken the bounce back loan out, common theme for many people. We're pretty sure we have a very robust plan. We're experienced consultants. We know what the workshops are going to be. We know what the pipeline's going to look like. Let's project the following number of workshops with the following spec and the following price and the following content. We just need to go out there and sell it and find people who want to buy these things. So we had a plan. We had a very detailed costed forecast, borrowed money on the basis of that, because you could do. That's what the government rule said. If you haven't done your first accounts, you can use a forecast. So we use a forecast. It was a forecast we'd already discussed and agreed on before the loans became available. Took some money and then ultimately didn't have a revenue stream to pay it back. Started to pay it back with what money we had, but then realized that unless we went full tilt at it with a product, it wasn't going to happen. So the learning was we just had to cut our losses and run effectively. Not run, but there are income streams that we can access more readily to put bread on the table. This is going to be really hard work and hard graft with 2 out of the 3 of us and missing a core competence and a core set of sales pipeline leads, which have dwindled now that this director's been largely out of business life for 18 months.
So Andy, you're a seasonal professional. You're kind of you're a management accountant. You've been there and done it. Strange question, I know. How did this make you feel?
Oh, and that's a very good question. I think we all maybe suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time, where you go, I can't possibly do that because I'm not good enough. There's lots of better people. You don't get to have a degree of entrepreneurial spirit without a denial of imposter syndrome from time to time. So you have to have a degree of optimism that this can happen. This is possible. There are odds are against us, but we can do this. You've got to be, we can do this. And I think if you overplay that into, of course we can do this. Of course it'll work. Of course it's sunny. Of course it'll happen, without really scrutinizing hard the mechanism of why success is going to happen, you can fall. And I think from a feeling point of view, you go, I feel a bit frustrated with myself that the sort of advice I give clients I haven't listened to myself, that your self-identity and self-worth, mine's not based in being a business person, being successful in business, but you've still got an element of gung-ho egotism invested into something you felt would really happen. And you can react in a number of ways to that. And I think one of the ways that I know I reacted and felt was a bit of denial. Okay, the business is on pause. We'll wait for things to pick up. We've got sunk cost. we'll just keep ticking along. We'll hope that something will turn up before we have to start banging our bounce back loan down. So we've got a few months. We can keep it ticking over and push back the hard decisions, because it hurts too much to think about it too hard. It hurts too much to acknowledge that we've actually failed at this and we need to call a halt. And so from a feeling point of view, there's a bit of, I don't want to deal with the negative ego points. I still want to be sunny and happy and optimistic like we were before reality hit. And I think denial probably is the most logical feeling that I had. And then once we got to the point where, no, we're going to call a halt here, let's make sure we've got all our ducks in line and make sure we've done everything we possibly can within our power to try and rescue this and make it happen. And once we've said no, it really is a dead duck. There's then a sinking feeling in your stomach every time you have to deal with it. I'm sure many people have gone through a business failure. They say one of the things about time management is you have to eat the frog first thing in the morning. The thing you really don't want to do, you have to do first and get it out of the way. Whereas if you're dealing with this kind of issue, it's like, it's all frogs. There's only frogs on the menu. Whenever you're dealing with anything here, I don't want to touch this because it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel a failure. It makes me feel really sad that I didn't listen to my own advice. If I'm not careful, that can be very negative as a spiral.
It's the emotional part of it. And imposter syndrome is a huge part of that. And it's come up a few times on the podcast. I don't think actually you ever get over that. And I think being an entrepreneur, you just learn how to manage it. That's the key thing. Because I've said this before on the podcast. If you meet anyone without imposter syndrome, please stay clear of them, because they're completely nuts and they have their own problems.
Every entrepreneur, successful or otherwise, has that duality of imposter syndrome and blind belief that denies reality in certain cases, but denies the possibility of failure. And that sometimes is the thing that causes them to reach for extraordinary things and achieve them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You play both of those, and either of them is dangerous if they get out of proportion. I think that you talk about things too early. I think that some of the things we did perhaps do well throughout the whole journey was we did think about pivoting several times. We did consider pivoting. We did say, right, if this is not working, what do we do? How do we rework it? And how do we get this business to a stage where we can make a success of it? I think ultimately it just became, for us, the success is not going to come through this venture that's, if you like, a partnership or, three people coming together. The success is going to come because one or other of us finds a client who wants something that requires the skills of the other people in the business, not necessarily the product that we've developed between the three of us.
So your product was secondary to actually your consulting skills. So perhaps you just had it the wrong way around.
And I think we developed a product that didn't have a marketplace, when in fact the marketplace was different. And we needn't have even developed the product. We could have worked together collaboratively without sinking some cash for a product that didn't have a ready buyer. So the learning I have, the other side of it, is how did it make me feel? It makes me feel older and wiser. It makes me realize that, some of the things that I've heard, I talked earlier about, understanding the sales and marketing angle of things as an accountant. I've learned quite a lot as I've dug around in the solopreneur world, trying to expose myself to the world of how people sell and market stuff. And it's always about, fail fast, fail cheap. Prove that there is a need before you build it. So, in the construction industry, you've got clearly a bit of difficulty to do some of that. But sometimes you have to have a proof of concept before you commit to putting bricks and mortar in it. But in any other business, you can actually go and say that I became successful with one particular thing during lockdown because I had the concept for a product for an online course that I wasn't sure whether anybody wanted. But I had the opportunity to go on a webinar and present a topic. And at the end of the topic, there was a natural spin-off that if you want to know more about this, I've got this course that runs through this stuff in depth. Here's what it talks about. And I hadn't written the course. I'd only written the synopsis and what it did and what problems it was going to solve. And only when people parted with hard cash to buy the course and come on with me did I have a very rapid period of actually writing between the lines to try and solve, or to kind of use my expertise, which I knew I could, to create the course that would solve the problems that were expressed by the pain that people were feeling. So it didn't cost me anything before I'd sold it. And that's the other fundamental that I would say. In a service business, it's easier to do than with a physical business, but just in time physical manufacturing still got the same theme. Don't invest the cash and sink it. Don't invest your time and sink it before somebody's bought it, if you can at all make that happen. Because at that point, you've got a guaranteed sale, a guaranteed return on your time, and you may not make a lot of money, but you've not lost it.
And I think just in time is actually very much in the construction industry. We tried it, didn't get on with it. Basically, the supply chain couldn't be trusted to operate on that kind of thing. And there's a great story that I heard, don't know if it's true, but it's a great story, that I think the quality control director of one of the large construction companies, and I think it was Vauxhall or Ford, got together and their bosses decided they would change jobs for a month. So that they did. So construction went into the car factory, whether it was Vauxhall or Ford, and the guy from the car factory went into construction site. And they came back after a month, and in front of their CEOs, they kind of reported back. And the guy from the construction that went into the car factory went, "My word," he said, "it's amazing. You know within 10 seconds what's going to roll off the end of that production line." He said, "And if you want to produce more, you just speed it up, just, milliseconds, and that you know exactly what's going to happen. Your deliveries are, almost to the 15 minutes. They're all tracked. You know what's coming in, when it's coming in, when it's got to come in." He said, "It's just amazing. I don't think I could improve on that." The guy that come from the Ford factory into the construction company, he went, "Well, I haven't got a clue." He said, "You don't know when things are going to turn up. Your supply chain's terrible. You don't even know what week it's going to turn up, let alone kind of what day. It keeps raining and it keeps stopping you. You're working in all kinds of stuff, and people aren't really getting that it rains one day, but it holds you up 4 days, and no one's really kind of allowing for that." He said, "But I don't know how you change it. I don't know how you change it with what you've got around you. And actually, it's amazing you actually produce anything at the end of the day, but you do. And what a brilliant team you've got." So completely different industries, and but a different skill set in doing what you do. And I've always said in our industry, in construction, firefighting we rely on it too much because we're really good at it. So it's quite a big thing. So just in time reminded me of that, really, and I thought that story was relevant.
Yeah, relevant, but it still comes back to where's the cash and where's the risk. Regardless of the model, you say, if X, Y, Z happens, I think my learning will say, let's think the unthinkable. Big corporations are required to have governance matrices that talk about risk registers and all that kind of stuff. And I do, historically, just a bit tired with that, because the big risks you cannot really work your way around, and the small risks you've got good people in place to manage and firefight, maybe. But when you come to a smaller business, there are still some risks that could be existential unless you think of your way around it. So our issue was the fact we were 3 people. We had some skill sets, but we didn't legislate in any way for what happened if one director stepped out and we lost that skill set, which was, one director stepped out, we lost our sales pipeline, we lost our ability to really network and sell. And the 2 of us left weren't very good at it. And so, in that case, I don't think we took that risk on early enough to say, well, the thing we need to do in our industry, or the thing we need to do in any industry, how do we cope with that? What are we going to do if? And the answer was not to throw more money at the product. The answer was to dissolve it as early as possible and cut our losses. But we tried for a period of time, and we probably had more luxury than people who had more aggressive cash flow needs.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I think, looking at, it was a partnership, as you say. Now, partnerships often say, it's really important your core values are aligned, but it's really important everyone understands your weakness and strengths and what would happen if one partner leaves. Partnerships, not in the legal sense, but in the kind of sense of shared ownership, they're one of the kind of biggest breakdowns in business, because there's so many things that can happen between people. They can also be a great success. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti a group of people getting together and forming a company, but it's got to be thought out much more thoroughly.
And, people, for any number of reasons, disengage, good and bad. But let's just say that one person just isn't there one day for whatever reason. What do you do? And contracts, we didn't have particularly contracts for service, because we were just pitching in and offering equal degrees of advice and support, but we weren't able to support the third director as she stepped out of the business, that she disengaged from business, from a lot of friends, disappeared into a hole and went to a very dark place.
Can I ask you, just to bring it to a close, what 3 tips would you give someone to stop that happening to them?
Oh, let's put them on the spot. 3 tips. Well, I'll start developing one of the points I made. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're building, whatever you are developing as a service, if you're a service provider, really make sure that you've tested the market concept, that there's a buyer for it before you commit huge amounts of time, energy, resource, and money before you launch into it. So there's got to be a marketplace, and it's got to be a marketplace you are equipped to exploit. So it's about the marketplace, and it's about, therefore, the problem that your business model is solving, the pain that somebody's feeling, not about the product that you produce to solve that problem. That's almost like number 2. Whatever you do, it's never about the product, because people don't care about the product. They care about the solution to a problem. That can be a product. It can be a construction solution, a software solution, I come and put my arm around you consultancy solution, whatever it is. But the pain that they feel that you're selling to, in a way, help people's emotions feel good about getting a need met. So number 2 is, doesn't matter what industry it is, it's still about meeting a need. If it's a shiny iPhone because I have a need for a shiny iPhone, it's not really about the tech. It's about the fact what I can do with that iPhone. And that's sort of 2 things. Make sure there's a marketplace, but make sure you're focused on the solving of a problem. I think the 3rd point is, don't let your ambition get ahead of your cash given risks. I'm an accountant by background. It's all about the numbers in a way, but knowing your numbers and knowing where your cash is, you do not have to have a very detailed, complicated spreadsheet or system. You just have to know where your parameters lie. And if you can't shoot from the hip on the Post-it note, or you can't shoot from the hip thinking it through in your mind and knowing how this angles, then you've probably not got a very good basis for business. So work on those things. The most frustrating chief executives I ever worked for when I was a finance director are the ones who knew the answer before they asked me what the question was when it came to how the business ticked and how it added up. And they're really just looking for making sure that the numbers that me and my team, we came up with, validated what they already thought. They already had an opinion. They knew where cash was heading. They knew where the macro numbers were. So know your numbers and know that it comes back down to cash.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Very much appreciated, Andy. And for any listeners out there, if you can like and comment on the podcast, that'd be really brilliant. But thanks again, Andy, and appreciate you coming along.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me again.
Thanks for listening to Bust and Beyond with Robin Hayhurst. Be sure to tune in next time and visit his website at robinhayhurst.com.